You will forgive me if I first say good night to Horace Bailey. Good night to Horace Bailey. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good night to Christchurch South. Good night to Christchurch. And I want those who are watching on video to know that this crowd is sufficiently large that I can say with justification, good night to Barbados. Today is the 14th of January, and it is not too late in the year for me to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all of you. And I have never in my life said Happy New Year with such profound meaning, knowing that the year preceding us has been the unhappiest year in the history of this country since independence. I know you agree with me. 2017 has gone on record as one of the worst years in the history of this country. And that is why when I say Happy New Year, I say it with a sincere hope and a wish that we will recover from the dread and the hopelessness and the despair of last year. Happy New Year, Barbados. The year 2017 has seen in this constituency of Christchurch West, and this constituency of Christchurch South, massive amounts of human waste flowing on the streets. The year 2017 has seen the blood of wasted humanity flowing on the streets of Barbados and of this Christchurch. I know my friend Adrian Ford will tell you that much of that blood that has flown from wasted humanity in this parish has been in his constituency. But I consider it a problem for the entire Christchurch, because I consider constituency boundaries mere artificial lines. And Adrian, my brother and my friend and my neighbor, I say to you, the blood that is wasted in your constituency is also a problem in Christchurch South. And it came home to Christchurch South just last weekend, and I tried to reach out to my good friend Dennis Tull and to commiserate with him, a man who does a good thing every Saturday evening for good people. It is a place where I've taken my wife and my children and my mother-in-law. A place of peace was turned into a place of violence just last weekend. And I don't come here tonight to blame a government for that. But when I'm finished, I hope you will consider that the government of this country must take some responsibility for what is happening in this country, as they must take responsibility for the human waste that runs through the streets of Worthing and Hastings. They must take responsibility for it. We know it is a problem. It is a technological problem. We know that. It is a problem of mechanics. We know that. But ultimately, I want to say to those tonight who criticize us for politicizing this issue, that the issue, the problem of waste, human waste on the streets of this country and of this constituency is also a political problem. The Barbados Water Authority is a statutory corporation. Its sole shareholder, as far as I'm aware, is the government. It falls under the portfolio of Mr. David Eswick. He is a politician. It is Mr. David Eswick who sets policy in relation to spending at the Barbados Water Authority. The fact that that sewage plant has not been maintained is not only a problem of mechanics and engineers, it is a political problem. Because it is politicians who have a responsibility for setting policy in relation to spending as it affects that sewage plant. The same politicians who took 13 million of your dollars and built a warehouse with windows up next to CBC are the same politicians who should have spent that money to maintain the sewage system in this constituency. It is a political problem tonight, I say to you. And don't let them tell you otherwise. It is a political problem as well. What were we supposed to do as an opposition in this country? Were we supposed to leave the affected voiceless? Let me pause and congratulate the social activism of Mr. Adrian Donovan, who for a long time became the voice of the residents and the business places along this commercial stretch and residential stretch. But there came a time when we as politicians had to address the issue, because as I say to you, the sewage system in this country ultimately falls under the management of politicians. And I therefore say to you, to that extent, it is a political issue. Don't let them cause you to back away from that. We are not here to apologize for our role as Her Majesty's loyal opposition. That is our legitimate role. Many of them are going around this country asking us as an opposition to be apologetic for our position on several issues. We're not backing off. You've seen the posters on the pole. You've seen them. And I suspect you like them. My speech tonight is consistent with what you see on those posters. I too am ready to serve. I began by referring to violence. I began by referring to the sewage on these streets without apology. It is a violence that afflicts this country that has diminished us. That sewage on that street has disgraced us. Whenever I drive along Hastings and Worthing and I see it, I feel personally disgraced. There is a sense in which, as a Barbadian, I feel also responsible. When we bring visitors to this country, and it now looks like the England as described by Charles Dickens 100 years ago, that is not us. That is not the standard we've set in this country. Those are not the standards we've set for ourselves. There is a sense in which this country must now come together and feel embarrassed and ashamed that these people have brought us to this. In the words of Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, how did we come to this point? How did we get here? Why must we as Barbadians now feel ashamed that the most simple aspects of our infrastructure cannot be properly maintained? I pause again. There's a gentleman no longer with us. And I have promised a year ago that whenever I come on this platform in Christchurch South, that I will not pass unless I call the name Sir Harold Bernard St. John. Legacy, my friends, legacy. This is a man who left this earth with a reputation intact, a reputation for the highest forms of political integrity. This is a man who did not reside in making popular decisions for the sake of his popularity. This was a man who told this country in 1986 that he was not going to liberalize taxation for the sake of an election victory. He predicted that this economy would fall into trouble in 1986. And he sacrificed his political life. And he sacrificed an election for the sake of truth, and for the sake of honesty, legacy, my friends. How can we pass this way but even once, unless we mention the name of Sir Harold Bernard St. John, wherever you are tonight, sir? Much maligned in his political life, but let us honor him tonight. Let us honor this patriot, and let his legacy guide the future, or guide the governance of any future government in this country, and I'm sure it's coming. I believe it is coming, and those are not the words of immodesty nor arrogance. But walk in the length and breadth of this country. I heard Wilfred talk about it, William talk about it. The people are ready. The people want change. We will not be distracted by those who try to distract us. It is the people. It is you, my friends. It is you and your thousands out here tonight who are asking for change, who want that election, not for the sake of a Barbados Labour Party victory, but for a return, the sake of a return to standards, the standards that we knew. This sewage problem is nothing deep. It is nothing difficult. The engineers tell me it is poor maintenance. It is not the engineers who control the purse strings and go and do the maintenance. It is politicians, I beg your pardon, who make that decision so that that problem will be solved. I have no doubt the sewage problem will be solved. It can be solved. The plant was built by Meng, not aliens, and Meng will solve the problem. We have competent engineers all through Barbados and all across the Caribbean, and they're accessible. That problem will be solved. The problem tonight in this country is not only the sewage flowing in the streets. It is not the problem of engineers being unable to do it. They will do it, they must do it, and they can do it. The problem in this country tonight carries 3 letters, BLP. That is a problem we want to solve, and we want to solve it soon. I have come to speak to you on my topic. I am ready to serve. That is my topic. Gloria says she's ready with me. You would have realized by now that I am combining the problem of sewage with that of violence. But tonight, we don't wish to speak at length about violence. But all I will say to you is that this government has also found itself unable to solve the problem of violence. Whatever judgment you make of those young men, and indeed some of your judgments may well be correct, but they're sons of grieving mothers. They're fathers of fatherless children. They are young men who could otherwise have been occupied in building this country. We have not known a Barbados in which we've lost 30 young men, not to suicide, not to drowning, to gunshots. Do you recognize your country? Do you recognize your country tonight as we move into 2018, having endured the hardships of 2017? Do you recognize it? I don't recognize it. The only entity in this country that recognizes it is the Democratic Labour Party, because they've taken us here. They have taken us into this abyss. And it is you, the people, who must draw this country back to the standards that we have previously become accustomed to. So don't blame the engineers. Don't blame the police. Those problems can be solved. I repeat to you, the major problem in this country tonight carries 3 letters, BLP. No leadership, And for those who want solutions to the problem of the BLP, let us identify what is their problem. A lack of leadership, a lack of management, no accountability, no transparency in the way they do things. And my friend here to my right says no integrity. Well, that is obvious. Because we have an administration now that speaks like Julius Caesar. Give me men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men, and such as sleep o' nights. Because while children will wake up in this country tomorrow, and their parents will find it hard to find a meal, and if they find a meal, it has no nutrition. We have mothers who will visit the supermarket, and when they go to the cash register, they become nervous. And they're looking from their purse to the cash register, and they're watching the numbers. No joke, no joke, no joke. We have men turning the ignition in the car, and they're afraid to look at the fuel meter. That is happening in your beloved country. How did we get here? After 14 years of prosperity and stability, my God, how did we get here? And they're walking around trying to make excuses for BLP. There can be no excuse for them. Their time has come. And while we in this country are suffering, they are getting fat. They must get fat if they restore the 10%, but you believe that is all? You believe that is all? Now, I am not here to defame a fella. Not here to defame anybody. But I know what you know. And what you know is fairly obvious. Very, very obvious. No names tonight. But somebody's very rich. And we are very poor. Somebody tonight in the last 10 years has become very rich. And we have become poorer. And like Julius Caesar, they say to each other, give us men about us that are fat, sleek-headed men and such as sleep o' nights. Not an idea for the advancement of this country. All they can do is fatten themselves. I am not in the habit. I didn't write this into my speech, but I will say it. 2 days ago, I was driving my car, and I heard a man who describes himself as a trade unionist warning the NUPW that they should be careful as to how they approach wage negotiations. I heard him. You heard him. And then he goes on, he is now Barbados' authority on economics. They must consider the context of the economy. And this is a man who made his name in Barbados as a trade unionist. And he is now telling trade unionists that they have no moral right to pursue the fat government for an increase, not to make the people of this country rich, but to keep their children from being hungry. And that is all they're asking for. I'm not going to call his name Horace. You call it. You call it. Call it Sheldon. Men like that must be dismissed from within your consciousness. Men like that must be accused of having no conscience. And they made their names as trade unionists. And they question and challenge the legitimate right of a union that has not had an increase in 10 years. And the number 10 is significant. 10% restored. A government of tens. Well, look, after the next election, I don't think they'll count 10 in the House. I don't think so. I am counting my friend Ryan, and I'm counting Adrian, and I'm counting Wilfred, I hope you put me in there. And the leader of the Christchurch team, William, I got you counted already. I don't know how much time I have, Carol, but I want 2 more minutes. Because this crowd came here tonight not for an execution, but for prosecution. There's a man who has gone to Parliament over the last 10 years. You know, it should have been Jerome Walcott. But that is life. But the man who has gone to Parliament for the last 10 years, we are going to prosecute him tonight. Tonight he will be and must be prosecuted. While the people of Worthing and Hastings were saying to the country that they were smelling effluent, while they were complaining, while they were visiting their doctors and saying that something was making them ill, while they were seeing effluent in the yard, he and the Minister of Tourism were bathing out there. An expedition in stupidity. An exercise in contempt. They were showing contempt for the legitimate statements and concerns of the residents of this community. They literally turned their backs on them, went into the sea, came out, and asked the photographers, take me, front page. And perhaps some journalists impressed, and perhaps some of us believed it. Because we say to ourselves that our ministers of tourism and health could not be this stupid. That a serious ecological problem is confronting this country. And these 2 fat men band their bellies and going to the sea. With indifference to the problems confronting these very streets. And we held a press conference around there in December. And we thought that the reason the post office was closed was only because of the smell. But the government post office was closed. The government post office was closed. And we left that location and went opposite. The street opposite the post office. Ladies and gentlemen, children, I have never seen such in my life. There was a pool of about 4 inches deep of effluent in a man's yard. And that man, in order to remove himself from his house, had to negotiate a sidewalk, a pavement, as narrow as 4 inches wide to make his way into the outer world. And those men went in the sea. And that is why I call that trip to the sea an expedition in stupidity, an exercise in contempt for the plight that people in this country were facing, not last week, not last month, but Mia Motley brought this problem to the attention of the public in 2016, I believe. Correct? 2016. And the Minister of Health in your country could find it fit only yesterday in anticipation of this crowd to go to his constituency office and remove the cobwebs. Because he doesn't go there. That is a ghost town. And he wipes the dust off of an old pine desk he has in there, puts a tablecloth on it, and he says he's holding a press conference. And he is now giving assurance to the citizens of Christchurch South that all is well. 2 years later, 2 years after he went into the sea, he knows that this meeting is occurring, and he is seeking to give us comfort. The Minister of Health can give us no comfort. Have you discovered that I haven't called his name yet? Have you discovered that I've called the name of Sahara Bernard St. John? And I will not do injury to the dignity of this platform by calling the name of the Minister of Health. He doesn't deserve it. Let us show him the contempt that he has shown the people of this constituency. Let us show him that. Let us not even acknowledge that he has a name. We come here tonight to prosecute him. What is his name? You have to call it for the sake of the court. The people against who? I can't say that up here. I am ready to serve. I believe you have water bills. Some of you have water bills. And that a portion of that water bill reflects a surcharge for sewage. It means, ladies and gentlemen, it means Barbados, tonight, you have been paying within your water bill a surcharge for the maintenance of sewage in this country, maintenance of the sewage plant. Don't let them tell you this can't be a political issue. Push them back. There's politics in this thing. And if you paid for the maintenance of a sewage plant and they build a warehouse with windows in Pine Hill, I suggest to you that is politics. That is poor administration. That is poor judgment. That is poor policy. And we are now suffering for it. That sewage plant, after 20, 15, 20 years, ought to have been maintained. Why did they not maintain it? And then they go into the sea. Chairman, why is that light flashing? I see. Thank you so much. I'm an obedient fellow and I'm not violent. And if they tell me I have 2 more minutes, I gone. How many? 22? I can't see so good. 22. 2. Always obedient. I want to leave this with you. A leading spokesman of the Democratic Labour Party promised you a few months ago that the next election will be the mother of all battles. And he went on to say it will be nasty. That is what he said. Barbados, he visited you with the language of violence. How can they speak the language of violence and seek to curb the pervasive problem of gun violence in this country? They are committing an equal wrong. This party does not consider this upcoming election to be an exercise in violence. We don't need violence to remove them. Our language will not be the language of violence. This is a zone of peace. Peace be still. The day is coming. The day is coming, and we will peacefully walk into those polling stations. This is a beautiful court. Sometimes you don't have to talk to the jury. We will do it very gently. And we will go back home and sit back and await the business of the night. But I know that you are cautioning the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. We have to caution them that that result must reflect our will. That there must be no hanky-panky. I am not defaming anybody, but this crowd here tonight tells me that Barbados is ready, as we are ready, and that as I am ready too. Carol, how much time I have? I gotta come down? Good dear. You know, 30 seconds, Carol Roberts. I came here tonight as part of my speech to give you word of my stewardship in Christchurch South. Behind there, they have not allowed me to do that. But I'm an obedient son. I have some calendars out there in Mr. Adrian Donovan's car and my car. And we have reflected on our calendar the vast amount of work that we have done in the constituency of Christchurch South. Because we believe that the way forward for this country is for people to bond themselves, one neighbor to the next, bind their minds and their hands and their wills and their efforts, and pull this country out of the cesspit into which the Democratic Labour Party took us. I will have that time another time. But my main purpose was to prosecute the accused. Thank you, Mr. Horace Bailey. I want you now, as I wrap up the case against the Minister of Health, being charged with neglect. How say you? What is your verdict? Being charged with the crime of political absenteeism from his constituency. How say you? And this government being charged with the offense of having overstayed its time in Parliament. How say you? I speak now as the judge. Take them down. Good night.